Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Today's News in Focus, of course, will cover the breaking news that happened earlier this morning, and that was that US President Donald Trump had said that Hamas and Israel have agreed to the first phase of his plan for a ceasefire to end the genocide in Gaza and an exchange of captives. Mediator Qatar said more details of the agreement would be announced at a later date. Now, one of the sticking points that Hamas had been asking for in terms of these ceasefire negotiations was the release of high-profile prisoners held by Israel, including the most popular and potentially unifying Palestinian political figure, Marwan Barghouti. But we will be touching on that in a bit, because we are going to, of course, be speaking on the announcement that happened this afternoon. And joining me from Marseille in France, I'd like to welcome seasoned journalist and someone who has, of course, survived two intifadas and has covered many of the attacks that have been happening in Israel, or by Israel, on the occupied West Bank and Gaza, Faten Elwan. Faten, assalamu alaikum. It's always good having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me on such a tremendous, happy day, hopefully for the time being, and it will last longer.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Faten, yes, there's optimism, but where do we stand in this? Because this is Israel that we are talking about, and even though we've seen images coming out of Gaza where there are jubilations occurring, it becomes very difficult to really trust Israel in this matter, doesn't it?
Especially that 59 Palestinians were killed really after Trump declared ceasefire yesterday. Within the last 24 hours, 1 hour before the ceasefire was implemented officially, 3 Palestinians were killed. And this is where we always have this saying, the devil stands in the details and the timing. But with Netanyahu, it's like a triple devil playing with every second possible to gain more and more and more without giving in return. So yes, people in Gaza are happy. Yes, they deserve to breathe. Even me, who doesn't believe in this ceasefire and this agreement, knowing that once the hostages are being released, hell will break down on Gaza. But still, at a moment after 2 years of having a break, even if it was illusionary break for a little bit of time for Gaza people, was enough to make them go in the street in chanting and joy and dancing about it.
Faten, the Hamas negotiating team were very diplomatic about their discussions. They were very pragmatic in their discussions. And even though they were dealing with Israel, the very same government where there is this heavy influence from the far right, and I'm sure you know I'm speaking about Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, they have been very meticulous in their negotiations. I read a report from Jeremy Scahill saying that when you're dealing with the devil, there's a lot of diplomacy that happens, but also a lot of caution that happens with regards to this. What's your take on the way Hamas have dealt with this, given that Israel reneged on a ceasefire in March when it was agreed upon in mid-January this year?
Well, the difference is the elements and the different color of lines that the withdrawal is gonna happen. Before, there was no withdrawal whatsoever, and sticking to one point that Hamas should be eliminated. And the weapon of Hamas should be eliminated too. So this is, again, where we say the devil stands in the details. If we go back to the agreement, it's clear that Hamas didn't agree on giving up their weapons. They said, we will freeze. And that's a big detail. There's a big difference between freezing using the weapon and agreeing on giving up those weapons. We need to understand that on the 10th of October is the big day that Trump really wants. And that is the Nobel Prize. We're talking about a kid who wants his prize regardless. I want this toy. I want this toy. In order to have this toy, he wants to force everyone, including Netanyahu. He didn't discuss with Netanyahu the declaration of going to a ceasefire. We remember in a press conference, he said it when he answered one of the journalists, like, did you speak to Netanyahu? He said, like, no, I didn't speak to Netanyahu, but he will agree. Like, I'm the boss. I'm the one talking about it. And he will agree to what I want. It's vague. We need to understand that whatever we're seeing right now is vague in the details, is vague in the implementary on the ground. There was a statement for the army radio saying clearly that the ceasefire is going to be implemented at 12 o'clock, but not fully and not utterly. There will be a discussion about the releasing the prisoners, but we don't know about the names and the number. There is a lot of buts in between. And he was insisting on repeating nonstop that the plan and the implementary and the timing is open to changing according to the situation and the time. So what Israel wanted from the beginning was, like, as I'm talking to you right now, I'm seeing videos of a tank attacking some Palestinians, and that will happen because they didn't fully withdraw yet. And this is where it's vague for some of them, that where they can go and where they cannot go, especially that the troops didn't withdraw until now. But we can see, like, we're talking about the ceasefire, right? And Trump issued it officially. 59 Palestinians were killed, and now we'll see the tanks shooting on Palestinians. So it's a vague. Is it an Oslo 2.0? Let's not be delusional and not describe it this way. Will it last? I have very big question marks, especially that Smotrich, the triangle of the devil, said it clearly that we agreed on eliminating Hamas. According to this agreement, there is no elimination of Hamas. We need to fight Hamas until the end. But I'm not going to vote in favor of this agreement, but I will not make the government collapse by withdrawing from it. And that by itself put a lot of fear in my heart about why. You were against this agreement all the time. What is in it? Is it that you want to take the hostages and then there is an underground agreement that things will go back
in fact, that's why I want to come into this, because there's so many gray areas in this. And I understand, and I think I'm the same, just like you. I don't know whether the ceasefire can be trusted. The 20-point plan can be trusted, because one of the gray areas that I'm very concerned about is this withdrawal of troops. And as long as they are there within the certain boundaries of Gaza, you've got a defense minister who's trigger happy, and you've also got a government that's trigger happy. That has to be a concern, because no one really knows what's going to happen with the Israeli army at any given time, even if the ceasefire is fully implemented. And as we speak right now, it's not been fully implemented.
Listen, what Israel wanted from the beginning was clear. They want a buffer zone, and that buffer zone is around 20 kilometers between Rafah and Egypt. This is what they want. They want to be in control of the border. They want to be in control of what goes in and out. And this buffer zone called Philadelphia is what they wanted from the beginning. And even with this plan on the table, they're still keeping it. We have a withdrawal for 80%, and then 40%. But then we have the 20%, and the 20% is where the beginning of the story and the end is the Philadelphia corridor, in which they control the goods, the income, the export, everything related to the Palestinians' life, and that get us back to the same zero zone that Gaza was a big jail and will still be a bigger jail right now, with more and more land and control over the border that they're going to lose with this agreement. Never, ever in the history of the Palestinian case, with all the ceasefire, especially when there's phases that you can trust an Israeli, or especially this extreme right, wicked, crazy government that is crossing all the borders and line. So the only thing that we're happy about as Palestinians, and now I'm going to withdraw myself from being a journalist and speak as a human being, that the only thing that we're happy about, that people in Gaza will breathe a little bit, will have a break a little bit. For how long? That's a big question mark, with a strong belief that it's not going to last for too
Yeah,
long.
I agree with you on that, Faten. As long as the women, children, the elderly are not being murdered for whatever period of time, we make dua that is, of course, the big positive with regards to this. After the break, I continue my conversation with Faten Elwan. One of the demands is that of the release of Marwan Barghouti. How influential is he in the unification of Palestine? My conversation continues after the break. Welcome back. I'm still in conversation with seasoned Palestinian journalist Faten Elwan. Faten, Marwan Barghouti, he's currently languishing in Israeli prisons. How much, for those who are probably unaware of Marwan Barghouti, is that I'd like to think the world is aware of who Marwan Barghouti is. How much of an influential figure is he in terms of Palestinian politics, in terms of the unification? Many have called him the Nelson Mandela of Palestine. So talk to us about that, please.
I know Marwan al-Barghouti in the beginning of the second Intifada, Al-Aqsa Intifada. And I saw when they tried to assassinate him, I was there. I saw when they arrested him several times. I saw how he turned from a politician sitting on his desk into someone who hit the street and fight with their people. The personnel of Marwan al-Barghouti is what we call a charismatic street leader that speak to the people with their language. He's just a village boy that refused being under oppression, and he decided to go and fight the occupation in the second Intifada, and he started Katab Shuhada Al-Aqsa Brigades group, and that was in the eyes of Israel a terrorist movement, but in the eyes of the Palestinian, it was a liberation movement that were defending themselves. Again, Marwan al-Barghouti grew up in the street. He was in the street. He spent years and years in Israeli jail. So when he came out of jail, he managed to gather not just the people, but also different factions. What's so special about Marwan al-Barghouti, and it's a card that Israel was holding on to for too long, since he was arrested in 2005, I think, that he is the future leader of Palestine. Why do we say this on and on and on? Because there is an agreement between all the faction, left, right wing, Islamic, atheist, whatever you want to call it, they all agree on the way that he works on the ground. He's beloved by the people. This is the only thing that is missing with any Palestinian leader. And he's politically smart. He knows when to throw or put down the guns and the arm, like he did before they arrested him, when they dismantled Katab Shuhada Al-Aqsa or Al-Aqsa Brigades. And he knows when to raise up the weapon and when he put it down. He's politically well connected, well approved by different faction. And this is why he managed to capture the heart of so young Palestinians 20 years ago. And now those young Palestinians are the one who are still looking for someone who speaks their language, who's close to their heart, and who is politically smart enough, accepted enough from all the faction to lead the scene on the ground. And because of his strength, Israel is holding on to him and refusing to release him, but on the base that they know that he's the golden winning card that can solve so many political situations on the ground. And because Israel doesn't want any peace, they want to keep him in prison. And this is why it's a big name that they're still discussing. Yesterday, the wife of Marwan al-Barghouti suddenly left Ramallah and went to Cairo, and this is not an innocent jump or a fast visit to there. And this is why I believe that for once, maybe, like, with my feelings and my intuitions, with what's going on around, with his wife jumping into Cairo in the middle of the night, knowing that the bridge is closed. So it's a special like way to get her out of Palestine in the middle of the night to jump into Cairo. It needs agreement, it needs coordination, it needs exception and opening the border, especially for her to leave. So I have a feeling that once and for all, we're gonna see with a 90% chance that maybe we're gonna see him out of jail.
Yeah, I think that would be a big one if Marwan Barghouti were to be released. I mean, you've mentioned 2005, that's 20 years. Who's he a bigger threat to, Faten? Israel or the Palestinian Authority? The reason why I bring the Palestinian Authority into this is because Mahmoud Abbas hasn't been out-and-out elections in Palestine for a very long time. In your view, who's he a bigger threat to?
Who's the bigger what?
The bigger threat. Marwan Barghouti, is he a bigger threat to Israel in terms of having peace, or the Palestinian Authority in terms of leadership within Palestine?
No. Even for the Palestinian Authority, like even for the Fatah people, he's a beloved one. He's not a threat to anyone. And you know, everyone point a finger to this poor president Mahmoud Abbas, saying that he didn't hold the election. We cannot just point a finger saying that he didn't hold any election because he didn't want to and he wanted to stay in his position or in his place, with so much disagreement that I have against how he's running the situation. But you cannot just say that he's corrupted and didn't do election. No, it's someone that didn't let him do the election and he just stood fast on rules. You cannot separate the West Bank from Gaza, and you cannot separate the West Bank from Jerusalem, and you cannot ask a president to do election in only the West Bank and then blame him for not including all the Palestinians all around Palestine, because what made him not go through those elections, his refusal not to do election in all Palestine. So we cannot just point a finger without pointing a finger for the reason, which was Israel, and not giving him the access to hold those elections. So we need to be fair also in pointing those fingers on who and what and when. So Marwan al-Barghouti, the only threat is Israel. Everything is related to Israel. I'm telling you, once he comes out, the Fatah movement is going to be the first one to celebrate him, including Mahmoud Abbas himself. Like, they're really good friends.
So, Faten, I mean, if we were to see this happening, what are the chances of it occurring? You mentioned 90%. But again, would Israel be willing to allow this to happen? Because I think Israel does fear a potential unified Palestine. And that, of course, would threaten the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, his coalition, that could collapse at any single time. But what are the chances that during these negotiations that are still occurring for the release of prisoners, that Marwan Barghouti is reunited with the people of Palestine and that potential leadership that could occur from his part?
You know, honestly, if you put anyone to answer that question, from the higher leadership to the youngest, like, I'm an expert when it comes to Palestine, but with this Netanyahu, you can never. Like, none of the rational analyzing come along with the level of craziness that he's working on the ground. So it's really hard to answer that question. But again, it's too early also to answer that question. If Marwan al-Barghouti is going to come out and unify everyone, will Israel be happy about it? No. You should ask, is the United States forcing Israel to prove that or not? Or is it in between a secret deal between Netanyahu and Trump? Let's get those hostages, and all those questions that you're asking me will not have any future because nothing is going to happen on the ground. Remember that when it comes to the West Bank, Trump said that I'm not going to allow the annexation of the West Bank, period. But what's happening on the ground is a full annexation of the West Bank. So even if Marwan Barghouti comes out of jail and he managed to unify Palestinians, unify them on what? On which part of Palestine? How exactly is going to be unifying if there is no control for the Palestinian to hold election in East Jerusalem, if they don't have power to go to Gaza and do election over there? If Tony Blair is going to be the one running Gaza. I never in time of history heard about a foreign
What
prime
is it?
minister
What is
for
your take on that, Faten, on Tony Blair
it's
potentially running Gaza, as they would say?
man, he's devil walking on the ground. What do you mean? He is like, you want to destroy a place?
Yeah.
Hello, Tony Blair, Habibi, come. I want you to go there. We want to. Like, it's insane that this is the master of destruction. He's the master of. He destroyed Iraq. He destroyed the EU.
Afghanistan. Yeah.
He destroyed Afghanistan, and now he wants to be like, we have a bunch of businessmen and thieves that are coming to be my president or my prime minister in Gaza. I never understand like how in the logic of history that politics is being run that way. You know, it's just a period of time, but then we have to remember in the mental state of Israel, starting from a Nakba to a Naksa to the first Intifada to the second Intifada, every temporary is permanent in their language. It's well known. This is why the word temporarily is always a way, like a slower path to implement the permanent on the ground. So we heard about the Trump Riviera wish dream in Gaza, and this peace coalition that Trump was talking about yesterday, and that is Tony Blair part of it, and another businessman from Egypt, and two other businessmen who are Jews. Like, why?
Jared Kushner being one of them. Yeah. The son-in-law of U.S. President Donald Trump. Yeah.
Why are you coming to run my country?
Yeah.
Like, if that makes any sense to you, please explain it to me.
Makes absolutely no sense to me, Faten. And unfortunately, that's where we have to end the conversation. Faten Elwan, absolute pleasure having you on. Shukran so much for joining us. Masalama.
Thank you.
That's Faten Elwan, a renowned Palestinian journalist. Well, we're going to continue this conversation because up next, I'm going to be speaking to Obey Aboudi from the Bisan Center for Research and Development. Do stay tuned. This conversation is after the break.